Yes, Your Honor.
Before we start, in my discretion and at the request of the state and the defense, I'm going to not allow still or video photographs of the witnesses or family members or the people that are here in the gallery today. If you want to photograph or video the court personnel, that's fine, but and this does not affect audio recording, but at the request of the state and the defense, I'm going to ask no film or still photography of the witnesses that will be testifying or the people that are present in the gallery. Anything else, Mr. Sachs or Mr. Keller?
No, Your Honor.
Could you bring me the defense, please? All right, I'll let the record reflect that the defendant is present with his attorney as well as counsel for the state. On this past Friday, the jury having returned verdicts of guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, specifically under the theory of with malice, premeditation, and deliberation in file number 13 CRS 6-234. The law requires the court to conduct a hearing to determine the appropriate punishment. At this time, is the state prepared to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Is the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Sachs, I'll hear from the state.
Sure, if I may, I'd like to start with a little evidence, if you would allow. The state would call Julia Nativi to the stand.
And again, I'll just remind that the witnesses are not to be photographed. The audio may be on, but no still photography or video of the witnesses. She an interpreter?
Yes.
Interpreter be sworn and then
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear that you will truly interpret to the witness the questions propounded to you for that purpose, and that you will truly interpret to the court such answers to the best of your knowledge and ability, so help you God?
I do.
Thanks.
ma'am, if you'll stand, please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right.
Si me hace favor de pararse, ponga la mano izquierda sobre la Biblia y levante la mano derecha, por favor.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
Está a
truth, so
punto de
help you
dar,
God?
se da la verdad, toda la verdad y nada más que la verdad, la ampare Dios.
Sí, lo aseguro.
Yes, I assure you it is.
Thank you.
Puede bajar la mano. Puede tomar asiento también.
Mr. Sachs, once she is situated, you may proceed.
Cuando se encuentre, puede empezar ya que esté usted lista.
Good morning, ma'am. Would you please tell this court, this judge, who you are?
Buenos días, señora. ¿Me puede hacer favor de decirle a este juez quién es usted?
Pues mi nombre es Julia Nativi y soy la hermana de María Nativi.
Well, my name is Julia Nativi, and I am the sister of Maria Nativi.
And obviously Maria Nativi was the female victim that we talked about in this case, is that right?
Y obviamente Maria Nativi es la víctima de la cual hemos estado hablando en este caso, ¿no es así?
Sí.
Yes.
And Maria was the mother of Jorge and Jacob, is that correct?
¿Y María era la madre de Jorge y de Jacob, así es?
Sí,
Yes.
Where are Jorge and Jacob living now?
Jorge y Jacob, ¿en dónde están viviendo ahorita?
And I don't need an address, but
Y no
who are they
está el
living
domicilio,
with?
pero ¿con quién viven?
viven en mi casa con Carlos, mis hijos y yo.
They're living at my home with Carlos and my children and myself.
And Carlos, I think, came to court with you today, is that correct?
Y me parece que Carlos ha venido aquí al tribunal con usted hoy.
Sí,
Yes.
And how is Carlos related to you?
¿Y qué parentesco tiene Carlos con usted?
es mi hermano.
He's
y
my brother,
es como una figura paterna para mis hijos y Jacob.
and he's like a paternal figure to my children and to Jacob.
Was Maria an older or a younger sister to you?
¿María era su hermana mayor o menor?
Menor, ella era después de mí.
My younger sister, she was born after me.
Back in the early part of 2013 when this happened, did you go to the hospital after you found out what had happened to Maria?
A principios del 2013, en las fechas en lo que esto ocurrió, ¿usted fue al hospital cuando supo lo que había pasado con María?
Sí, o sea, a mí me avisaron a las 4 de la mañana que había pasado un accidente, pero no sabía qué magnitud o cómo era el accidente.
Well, yes, I received a call at 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was told that there had been an accident, but I wasn't told exactly what. I wasn't told of the magnitude or the nature of it.
Y no me hablaban a mí, sino a Karina, porque Jacob nomás decía Karina, Karina.
And, well, they weren't calling me. It was just, well, Jacob kept calling Karina, Karina.
Y le dije a Karina, no puede haber pasado nada porque tu tía me hubiese llamado a mí primero, porque ella cualquier cosa, que el niño se cayera o algo, ella siempre me llamaba a mí.
And I told Karina, well, nothing could have really happened because if something happened to him, to Jacob, well, your aunt would have called me. Whenever anything happens, even if he just falls or trips or something's happened, she'll call me.
Y le dije, ha de ser un error, ha de ser algo otro niño que se llama Jacob.
And I
Vamos
said-
a ver al apartamento.
And I said, it must be a mistake. It must be some other child named Jacob. Why don't we go check at the apartment?
Y cuando llegamos estaba lleno de cintas amarillas y los policías nos dijeron, ay, ellos están muertos, los mataron.
And when we arrived, the house was all surrounded with yellow tape, and the police was there, and they said, they're all dead. They've all been killed.
Dice, el niño está bien, está en el hospital, pero a ellos los mataron.
And they said the child is fine. He's in the hospital, but they've been murdered.
Y les dijimos, ¿cómo? ¿Por qué? Si ellos no se metían con nadie, ellos no tenían enemigos.
And we said, well, how is this possible? They never, bothered anybody. They didn't have any enemies.
Y luego los policías manejaron mi carro al hospital y nos llevaron, no nos dejaron entrar.
And then the police took my car. They took us to the hospital. They didn't let us in the house.
Y cuando llegamos al hospital nos tuvieron un rato porque dijeron que Jacob no nos podía ver llorar.
And then when we got to the hospital, they made us wait a little while because they said that Jacob couldn't see us crying.
Before we go further, could you tell us who Karina is?
Antes de que sigamos adelante, ¿nos puede explicar quién es Karina?
Es mi hija más grande.
She's my oldest daughter.
Okay, so she's also someone who's living in the household with you and Carlos and the boys?
Entonces ella es alguien que vive también en la casa con usted y con Carlos y con los niños.
Sí.
Yes.
Let me approach your honor.
¿Me puede
Yes.
acercar a usted?
Ma'am, I'm going to show you a
Señora, le
photograph
voy a
that's marked
demostrar una
State Exhibit number
fotografía.
89.
Es la prueba del estado número
Do you see that red
89.
sticker
¿Puede
that has
usted ver
89 on it?
este sello colorado con un 89?
Sí.
Yes.
just ask you to look at that. Can you tell us what that is?
Le pido que vea esta foto. ¿Nos puede decir de qué es la foto?
Son sus hijos de Mario, mis sobrinos.
They're Maria's children, my nephews.
Is that both Jorge and Jacob in that picture?
¿Son Jorge y Jacob en la foto?
Sí,
Yes.
And I believe there's a date on that photo of June of 2012. Is that
Y
correct?
creo que está fechada la foto junio del 2012, ¿no es así?
sí.
Yes.
Does this photograph of Stacy exhibit number 89, does it fairly and accurately depict what Jorge and Jacob looked like back at the time that their parents were killed in January of 2013?
Y esta foto muestra de una manera precisa o correcta la manera en que se veían físicamente Jorge y Jacob a principios de enero cuando sus padres fueron asesinados.
Sí,
Yes.
And how old is Jorge right now?
¿Qué edad tiene ahorita Jorge, sabe usted?
tiene 14.
He's 14.
And how old is Jacob right now?
¿Y Jacob qué edad
Va a
tiene?
tener, bueno, ahorita tiene 6, en enero va a cumplir 7.
Well, right now he's 6. He'll be 7 in January.
Your Honor, I move then to introduce Stacy exhibit number 89 into evidence for the purpose of sentencing.
Su señoría, pido que acepten la prueba como parte, lo va a recibir como prueba.
Ms. Nativi, while you were at the hospital, did you eventually get a chance to speak with Jacob?
Señora Nativi, cuando usted estuvo en el hospital, ¿en algún momento tuvo oportunidad de hablar con Jacob?
Sí,
Yes.
And were you able at that point to find out how he was?
¿Y entonces se pudo enterar usted cómo estaba él?
sí, pues cuando entramos al cuarto donde él estaba, entramos con Jorge y él solo entramos y él le dijo, Jorge, Jorge, ¿por qué mataste a mi mami y a mi papi?
Well, when we came into the room, he was there and we came in with Jorge and he said, well, Jorge, why did you kill my mom and dad?
Porque dice que la persona que lo hizo se parecía mucho a Jorge.
Because he said that the person that had done this looked a lot like Jorge.
Did he tell you anything else there in the hospital about what happened to him?
¿Y ¿Le dijo algo más a usted ahí en el hospital acerca de lo que le había pasado o algo más?
Sí, y él dice que a alguien le hicieron así con la pistola, pero que ya no tenía pila, por eso no le dieron a él.
Yes, he said someone went like this with a gun, but that they didn't have anything left in it, and that's the only reason why they didn't manage to shoot him.
Did Jacob tell you this in the hospital that very first night?
¿Jacob le dijo esto a usted en el hospital en la primera noche cuando esto ocurrió?
Sí,
Yes.
Where was Jorge during all this time?
Jorge, ¿en dónde estaba durante todo este tiempo cuando esto ocurrió?
estaba en la casa en la noche antes que pasara eso, horas antes. Mi hermano fue y que teníamos una actividad de la iglesia y él lo llevó para la casa.
Well, he was at the house. He'd been at the house for hours before, on the night before, because we had been at the church, and then we took Natividad home.
Whose house was he at?
¿En casa de quién estaba?
En mi casa.
At my house.
So when this happened, he wasn't with his mother and father or Jacob?
Entonces, cuando esto ocurrió, él no estaba con su madre y su padre y con Jacob.
No, él estaba en mi casa, solo estaba Jacob y ellos dos.
No, he was at my house. Only Jacob and the two of them were home.
Have you had Jacob in any kind of therapy or counseling or medical care since all this happened?
¿Usted ha conseguido que Jacob vaya a algún tipo de terapia o a ver algún terapeuta o ha recibido algún cuidado médico desde que esto ocurrió?
Sí, él ha tenido como terapia intensiva donde lo iban a ver 4 días por semana, porque él en la escuela estaba siempre, porque él como recuerda mucho eso y lo han medicado para que trate de, porque eso le ha afectado demasiado, no solo a él,
he was
a todos.
receiving a very intensive therapy. They were coming to see him 4 days a week because when he was at school, he was remembering it a lot. They're giving him some medication because he was just having trouble because he was just remembering it so much and it was affecting him so much because it's affecting all of us so much.
That brings up 2 questions I'd like to ask you. How is Jacob now, today?
Eso me hace querer hacerle a usted dos preguntas. Hoy en día, en este momento, ¿cómo está Jacob?
Está siempre recibiendo terapia. Está en una escuela especial donde solo hay 3 maestros como con poquitos niños. Y todavía ahorita con lo de las noticias, desde que esto empezó, ha afectado bastante a toda la familia y a él, porque cuando la semana pasada él miró en el periódico las fotos de ellos y mi mamá y mi papá están aquí de visita y él corrió a donde ellos estaban y él les dijo, mira, es mi mamá y mi papá, tú no los conociste, pero mira, son ellos.
Espérenme un momentito. Well, he's still receiving a lot of therapy, and he's now in a special school. He's been put in a special school where there's only 3 teachers and very few kids in there, because this has just affected the whole family and him very much. And then here in the last few weeks, because of all of the publicity and everything surrounding the case, there were pictures in the newspaper, and he saw the picture of his mom and dad, and my mom and dad are visiting right here now, and he ran to them and he showed them and he said, look, it's my mom and dad. You never got to meet them, but this is my mom and dad. Continúe.
Y él piensa que, él diciéndoles a ellos, porque él piensa que mis papás no conocen a ellos.
Well, he said that to them because he thinks that my parents didn't know them.
Y él estaba diciéndoles y empieza a recordar todo y le empieza a decir cómo lo que él vio.
And then he starts remembering it all again, and then he starts telling them how it all happened.
The second question I had is, you said that this has affected your whole family. How has this affected your whole family?
Y mi segunda pregunta es, usted me ha dicho que esto ha afectado a toda su familia. ¿De qué manera ha afectado a toda la
Pues
familia?
porque nada es igual. Estaba siempre cerca de mí. Nosotros somos una familia muy unida, donde yo podía irme a trabajar tranquila, dejando a mi niña. Tengo una niña de 12 años que es como su hija de ella también. Y ahora no puedo salir a todo eso, salir confiada. A veces sabemos que ellos no tenían enemigos, pero a veces tenemos miedo porque no sabemos.
Well, nothing is the same. Nothing's been the same. I was very close to my sister, and we were a very close, very united family. And now I, for example, don't have anybody that I can trust, that I can leave my 12-year-old daughter with. She used to watch her, and it was like her own daughter. And I can't go out anymore because I don't feel like I can trust people, because I know that they didn't have any enemies, but you can't help but feel afraid that something might happen.
Y ahora en la mañana que él se fue a la escuela, yo le dije, él escuchó ayer que yo iba a venir a la corte y dice, en la mañana antes de irse, mami, vas a la corte porque tú tienes que estar en la casa, mi papi y tú no se tienen que ir, ¿ok?
Well, and like this morning when he was getting ready to go to school, he knew that I had to come to court today, and he said to me, Mommy, you can't go to court today. You know that you and Dad need to be here. You and Dad need to stay home.
And who's he calling mom and dad?
¿A
right
quién le
now?
dice mami, papi?
A mí me dice mami y a mi hermano le dice papá.
He calls me
Carlos.
mommy, and he calls my brother papi. Papá.
How about Jorge? How is Jorge today?
Jorge, ¿cómo está ahora?
Pues también le ha afectado bastante, se encierra mucho en el cuarto y pues él está siempre callado.
Well, it's also affected him quite a bit. He locks himself up in his room a lot, and he's just very quiet all the time.
Is he also undergoing any kind of therapy or counseling or treatment?
¿Él también está recibiendo algún tipo de consejería o tratamiento, terapia para ayudarle con todo esto?
Sí hemos buscado, pero él dice que él no quiere recibir, que él está bien.
Yeah, we've looked for it, we've sought it out for him, but he says he just doesn't want to. He says he's fine.
Mm.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions.
Gracias, señora, no tengo más preguntas.
So Jacob was within days of turning 4 when this happened?
Entonces, Jacob estaba unos cuantos días de cumplir los 4 años cuando esto ocurrió.
Sí, Sí,
Yes,
porque
yes,
eso
because
pasó 5 de enero y él cumplía 4 años el 21 de enero.
this happened on the 5th of January and he was going to turn 4 on the 20th of January. Muy bien. Okay.
Questions for this witness?
El abogado tiene oportunidad de hacer preguntas
Briefly.
también, brevemente.
Ms. Nativi, good morning. Jacob, you described that I believe you said he described that someone pointed a gun at him. Is that correct?
Señor Nativi, buenos días. Me parece que usted dijo que Jacob le señaló que alguien le había apuntado con un arma, con una pistola.
Sí,
Yes.
And I think you described, did Jacob describe the weapon? Did he show a motion like he was showing a type of weapon?
Y Jacob hizo un movimiento con la mano así como que enseñaba el tipo de arma que se había usado.
no, él solo hace así, me hizo así, pero no tenía pila.
He just goes like this. He just like did this movement, but he said, but there was no battery.
You showed I think when you were testifying, you did your hand in the motion. I didn't know if you were trying to demonstrate what he showed you or if that's just how you were describing.
Cuando usted nos dijo anteriormente lo que le dijo Jacob, usted puso su mano en cierta posición o hizo una señal. No sabía si era como usted estaba demostrando o si era lo que Jacob había hecho con su mano.
No, Jacob hizo así.
No, Jacob
como
went
que
like
le
this, like-
apuntó, pero que
Like
no tenía pila.
Like they had pointed it at him, but that there was no battery or no charge.
So he described like what appeared to be a pistol to you?
Entonces, ¿a usted le pareció ser que estaba describiendo como una pistola, un arma corta?
No, pues exactamente no sé qué describía, nomás él hizo con su mano y que no tenía pila.
I don't know exactly what he thought or what he was describing. I just know that he just made a movement like that and he said like, oh, it didn't have any batteries.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Gracias, esas son todas mis preguntas. No
Thank you, ma'am. You can
Muy
step
bien.
down.
Puede bajar del banquillo, señora.
For the
That's all the evidence on the state.
Will there be evidence on behalf of the defendant? And then I'll give you both an opportunity to be heard.
Yes, Your Honor. I would call Jonathan's mother.
All right.
Stand.
I don't know. We're gonna do it by first name.
Stand, place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
You may proceed,
Thank you.
as we previously discussed as well.
Good morning. Could you state your first name?
Jackie.
Are you, and how are you related to Jonathan?
I'm Jonathan's mother.
Jackie, if you could you go back and I'd like for you to talk about Jonathan's life, essentially, and have you always been with Jonathan throughout? Has he always been in your care?
Yes.
Where was Jonathan born?
Houston, Texas.
And tell me a little bit about where you lived and what life was like in Houston, Texas.
We lived in a really rough neighborhood. It was basically the projects where he was raised. And I lived with his dad for a while. And when Jonathan was about 8 months old, 9 months old, his father and I split up. So it was really hard because I was a single mom for a while.
Did he get back in contact with his father at some point? Or?
Yes, his father kept in contact the whole time.
So tell me about Jonathan's childhood, I mean, and anything, is there anything significant that you recall for, as a toddler or growing up?
Yes, his father was in and out from jails and prisons, and I used to take Jonathan very little. I think he was maybe about, I could say maybe about a year, a little bit younger, when I used to take him to the jails to visit his dad, and he was not even able to stand up. He would just kind of just touch the, how do you call it, that screen, the window, through the window, and, you know, they both would touch hands. That's how Jonathan was raised for the next, I think, 8-9 years, just visiting his dad in jail and in prison.
Okay. So when you say that's how he was raised, but that's how he kind of knew his father?
That's how he knew his father, yes.
And did you continue to live in Houston during that time?
Yes, we did.
You described that you lived in the projects up until Jonathan, I guess you said, was about 9 years old, is when that's how he knew his father. Did y'all continue to live in that same area during that time period?
We moved from Houston, Texas to North Carolina, so his father remained, incarcerated in Houston, Texas. So we did move when Jonathan was about 3 years old, kind of escaping the violence that that we have in the projects and that we have in Houston, Texas. So I decided it was best for us to move to North Carolina. So they did have contact, even though we were here. But unfortunately, I was a single mom. I was not able to afford somewhere nice. So we kind of ended up living in some trailers, just a lot of violence and drugs and stuff like that.
And you're referring to here in North Carolina?
Yes, we lived here in North Carolina.
Did Jonathan go back to Texas?
Yes, he would go back to Texas about twice a year, sometimes 3 times, to visit his father, who was incarcerated.
Who did he stay with when he was in Texas?
His grandmother.
And that's his father's mother?
Yes.
And would he stay for extended periods of time?
Yes, he would. Yes, he would.
Like
a month.
Okay. Was there a time that he and his father got to spend time together when he wasn't incarcerated?
Yes, his father was released from prison when Jonathan was about 8 years and a half, and I remember that summer he was really excited because it was like the first time he was really kind of, going to spend some real time outside the prison, and I let Jonathan go. I remember he was in the Boy Scouts, and he was real happy to see his dad, and he was going to offer his dad to sell some popcorn for Boy Scouts, and they did that together, and he spent there about a month and a half right after he got out of prison.
And at that time, did Jonathan was he having emotional or mental issues
No.
that you could tell?
He was happy, even though it was hard because he had to go see his dad, in a prison, and that's all he knew since he was about 18 months. That's all he knew, seeing him in prison. And it was a little hard for him, but no, he was fine. He's a good kid. He was, he went to church as a little boy, and he always wanted words at the church because he knew most of the Bible verses and stuff like that. So he was a really good kid.
So did something happen between him and his father, or did something happen to his father?
Yes.
What happened, and when did that happen?
Almost a year later, after Jonathan visited his father, Jonathan last saw him August of, I can't recall the year, but Jonathan was 8 years old, and a year later, November of that year, his father was kidnapped by the drug cartel.
And how did Jonathan find that out? Was he here in North Carolina when that happened?
Yes, we kept it from him for a while because we just did a missing, his mother just did a missing report, kind of, well, maybe he's just out there. He's just, probably doesn't want to come home for right now. So 1 or 2 months went by and we didn't really tell him anything. But he was asking around Christmas time, when's my dad going to come? Why is my dad not calling me? Jonathan would call his phone and it would go to voicemail, I began to seek therapy for him because I knew what had happened with Alex, but we were not quite ready to tell him because he was only 9 years old when this happened.
You mentioned what happened with Alex?
Yes, the kidnapping with Alex. We finally told him.
Okay. That's his father's.
Yes, his father. Yes, his biological father.
At some point, was his father presumed to be dead?
He's been missing for 9 years now. They never found a body, but the person that he was with had Alex's driver license, and he killed himself. He hung himself on Alex's birthday, and we assume he knew that Alex was killed by the drug cartel, but still 9 years, and we still don't have a body. So yes, he's presumed that he was killed by the drug cartel.
So how did that affect Jonathan?
Tremendously. He went from a church little boy, a Boy Scouts little boy, to just a very depressed child.
So I believe you said you did seek help?
Yes, we did seek help when he was in the 3rd grade because I knew his father was missing and he didn't comprehend. We went ahead and we seek for therapy, professional help.
What type of symptoms? So Jonathan, I think you said he was depressed.
He was very depressed. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Did he show any other
Yes, he had
signs of?
Yes, he had a attempt to suicide when he was, I think he was 10 years old. The first time he tried to attempt suicide.
But you said when he was 10 years old?
Yes, he was 10 years old.
How did he try to do that?
An overdose.
Now, was Jonathan on medication at that point?
No, it was just therapy sessions.
What happened as a result of that? Did
He had to be committed. That was the first time he had to be committed to a hospital. I'm sorry, a mental health hospital.
How long was he committed?
He was there for about, I think, maybe 4 weeks.
And now, that was here in North Carolina?
Yes, that was in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay. And so what happened after that?
He kept having a lot of issues in school. He was not able to really cope with school, cope with the family. We had a lot of problems in the neighborhood and school. Teachers would call me every week. He just couldn't cope. And we kept back and forth from Dorothy Dix to Holly Hills, Dorothy Dix, Holly Hills, because he was just very depressed. I was scared for his life.
Was he on medication during this period of time?
During that period, they did try medication for a while. It was not working.
Do you know what they tried?
Yes, the first time I think they tried is Depakote, and it was another pill because I can't remember exactly the name. It starts with a Z, but it's for mood disorders, and anxiety.
And you said that he continued to have, I believe you said continued to have issues. Did he threaten or try to commit suicide?
Yes, he did. When he was 12 years old, he tried to commit suicide again.
Was that the second time? What happened then?
He had a BB gun, and he was still, I think 11. I think it was 11, and he wasn't really, like aware, like, that's a BB gun, that's not gonna hurt me. And he was just really depressed, and he got the BB gun and he pointed it to his belly, and he pulled the trigger.
You said that he was having trouble, at school. What grades did he actually complete?
The only grade that he really completed was the 3rd grade, that he finished completely with no hospitalizations, with no mental health issues, the 3rd grade.
So the other grades, he would what would happen?
The 4th grade is where he had his first suicidal attempt.
Okay.
So he couldn't go back to school. He was hospitalized.
But would he then try to start a new year?
Yes.
Did he move along in the school system as far as grades?
No. 5th grade, he had to be he had to go to an alternative school because once again, after the suicidal attempt, they thought that it was not good for Jonathan to go to a regular school, so they decided to put him in It was a 6 months program, and that's where he lived. It was a residential facility, and it was for children only with severe mental health. And Jonathan qualified to go to this place, and he stayed there for half of the 5th grade. So he didn't go to school. He went there to school. He would just visit us.
Do you know the name of that?
Yes, it's Right School.
Okay. Now, during that time, how were things at home? Was he having
He was having
with
it.
anyone at home?
He was having issues with my husband because of the mental illness. There was a time where CPS was involved, and they did come, and check on us because there was an incident where my husband did lay his hand a little bit, too much, that it called, CPS to come.
Did you report that, or did someone else?
Jonathan was with the therapist. He was seeking a therapist. So during this time, when Jonathan was yelling in the room that my husband was being abusive, I looked at Jonathan's eye, and it was red, and his whole face was bruised. So immediately, I called the therapist and I reported it to the CPS.
Did Jonathan, throughout his life, would you say he had that he was subjected to much violent behavior?
Yes, absolutely. Growing up in, Houston, Texas, and going back and forth, Jonathan, I remember he told me one time that he had seen a few people get shot, but that's very common in Houston.
So you're saying about how old was he when he said he saw people get shot?
I think maybe he was around, I want to say maybe 13.
I mean, he like witnessed people getting shot?
Yes.
Was this all at one time?
I think it was in different occasions. I think 3 of the times he told me it was in 3 different occasions. And one of them, they tried to kill him, and there is a police report about that.
Do you know what happened?
Yes, he was in the house, and there was already problems. This is the time he moved to Houston, Texas for a while, based, on some of the difficulties that he was having, with his stepfather at home. So we thought it was best for him maybe to try to go to Houston, Texas. He was there, and he had some problems because of a grocery store. He would walk, and he would go there with a friend, but these older kids who were about 18, 19 years old said, "Hey, this is my territory. You can't come." Like I said, he was about 13 years old, and they would have had problems, and they beat him up that day. They cut his lip. He still has the, in his lip where they cut him. They beat him so bad that day. I think a few days afterwards, one of the guys, I think his name was Jesse Vargas, tried to go into the house where Jonathan was with a gun. And Jonathan called his grandma, and the police was called because he was trying to kill Jonathan. He was arrested.
So you described that being in Texas. How about in your neighborhood? And did you live in Raleigh? Or
Yes.
Were you out in the?
No, I lived in Raleigh.
All right. What area did you live?
I lived in I had a Raleigh address, but I lived in Gardner.
Okay. Is that where you were living back when these events occurred back in 2013?
Correct.
Okay. On Montesino?
Yes, correct.
Okay. What, if any, specific instances of violence do you recall that Jonathan may have witnessed or been involved in out there?
He had some issues with some of the gangs that were there, and they had already pulled guns on him, and they had already followed him one time. And in the woods, he was able to escape with one of my brothers. And I did confront the mother about this, but she denied that her kids had any weapons. She denied that Jonathan was, just making it up. But go ahead.
Did you, at the trial, there was some evidence that you specifically had called the police or didn't like certain people coming to your house? Is that the case?
Yes, Moses.
how did you know Moses?
I met Moses through my brother. Well, I didn't know him personally, but I knew he would hang with my brother, my older brother, and I know that he had offered my brother to keep guns, and my brother would say like, heck no, you take it to your house, you take your stuff to your house. So I knew he was bad influence because they used to smoke pot together. And Jonathan was about, if I'm not mistaken, he met Moses when he was about, I would say 12 years old maybe.
So that was just somebody you did not want around Jonathan?
I did not want him, no. He would come outside of not outside of my house, but I live in in a cul-de-sac. So he would come around and he would park his car there. And I know it was him. So I used to go out there trying to chase him. And one time I saw Jonathan getting in the car and I followed him. And Jonathan got out of the car before, I got to him, but I followed him in the car. And I told him, my son is 13 years old. You're grown. You need to leave him alone. Stop coming to look for him because he's going to get you in trouble or you guys are going to get in some kind of trouble. And you're older than him. So he got out, and he had something in his hand. And he was just going like that. And, he was cursing at me.
And when you say he would come up, is there like a dirt road or something?
Yes.
That comes up behind?
That was another event that I caught him. He went through the back, and I saw Jonathan and two of my brothers, and they were heading out there. And when I opened the window, I saw him. So I went to chase Jonathan. I was running because they were fixing to hop in the car. And I started yelling at him. And finally Jonathan decided not to get in the car, but once Moses saw me, he reversed and he started to go back. And Jonathan did not get in the car with him.
Now, you have brothers. How old are you? Are your brothers about Jonathan's age?
A year older. They're 28, 23, 21, and 18. Oh, yeah, I think 18.
And Israel Vasquez is your brother?
Yes, he's my brother.
And he's also charged with murder?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Are you aware of it? So were there any incidents, though, where Jonathan was either shot at
Yes.
or assaulted?
Yes, before that incident that we had, which was in August in 2012, Jonathan was really depressed again. He couldn't cope with school, and we had to put him in another alternative school. And he was already having a lot of issues in the neighborhood, again, with these gang members. And we decided to do an alternative school. Once again, he couldn't cope with the school setting. This was in the 8th grade, and we sent him in an alternative school. He was very depressed. This was February of 2012. He was asking me, what would I do with the things if he passed away? And I said, what do you mean? He said, what would you do with the things I passed away? He said, I don't want to live no more. And he opened the car, and he tried to jump out. And I stopped the car, and I kind of tried to calm him down. We were very close to the school. And, I was trying to figure out, is it committing suicide? Is it because of the neighborhood? Is it because of the problems with the neighborhood? Because they had already pulled guns on you? Is it because your father, he was kidnapped? What was it? And he wouldn't really say. When we got to the school, they just told me I need to take him to mental health, to try to get an evaluation. And a month later, I think he continued to have a really problems with the neighbors, and I really don't know what it was, but we ended up calling the police, and we had to commit Jonathan. We tried to commit Jonathan again. He was 14 years old, and they sent us home. They said, nothing's wrong with Jonathan, you need to go home. But that afternoon, Jonathan tried to commit suicide again, and he was hospitalized for 5 months due to this incident. That was
in 2012?
This was in 2012, yes, 2012. And he was discharged from the mental institution in June of 2012.
Where was he housed?
This was in Jacksonville, North Carolina, Strategic Center.
All right. What happened when he got out? Come home?
Yes, he came home in June 2012. I told him that maybe, he needed a little more time because of the incident that happened with his father. But they said, no, I think, He can go home. And I just knew he wasn't ready. His mental health was severe, and I knew he was just not ready to come out. I think he needed a little more time. It was a 9-month program, and he got out at 5 months. This was June of 2012 when he was discharged from the mental institution. And if I recall, August 20th of 2012, he got shot.
Was he actually injured?
No, he was. They pointed the gun to his head, to his chest. He was walking in the neighborhood. He was cutting a yard, and he came, from cutting the yard. And one of the gang members, kind of started to tell him some stuff, and that's when they pulled the gun on him. And Jonathan kind of tried to fight, with the gun. And the gun got fired, and it hit the floor. And one of the neighbors heard the gunshots, and the police was called to see what had happened. But Jonathan came home, and he did not say anything. But I knew his shirt was ripped, and he was really nervous.
How did you find out about it?
When the police came. When the police came, they said that they reported that the gunshots, and that's when Jonathan told them, I got shot, but they missed it. Because it went to the floor, and he was like, I have residue still on my hands. Go ahead and test me. He just tried to kill me. He just tried to kill me. He was charged. Not right then. He wasn't arrested, I think, not right then. But a few days later, he came.
No, when I say he, who was charged?
Not Jonathan, the guy, the gang member.
What, do you know what gang?
Orphans.
That was, okay.
Yes.
Was Jonathan in a gang as far as you knew?
As far as I knew, no. Jonathan never, the only person I saw him hanging with was with Moses and his brother. But he would not go anywhere. He would be like right there, like outside. That's why I told you, like when he would try to get in the car, that's when I used to chase him. Because Jonathan had a curfew. He had to be home every day at 9 o'clock, every single night. And Jonathan, every single night came at 9 o'clock, except, that one time that incident happened when I called the police. But he would come home every time at 9 o'clock. And in the middle of the night, I would check on him. So no, I never let him, like hang with other people. Jonathan went to the movie theaters 3 times by himself. Well, not by himself, but with one of my brothers. But I never let him go anywhere.
So the incident you were just referred to about where you called the police, he did not come home on time. What, was that in December?
That was in December, yes, when I called the police. Yes, because...
December 4th?
Yes, because it was... Jonathan would come home 9 o'clock on the dot. Like if Jonathan would not come home at 9 o'clock, he would have to call me like within minutes. So I knew something had happened that day because it was not normal that Jonathan would not come home. He would have to be there at 9 o'clock. This was already 10:30 and Jonathan was not home. And and now back to with the incident that we had with the gun, that they got shot, that they tried to shoot him. This gang member wasn't arrested that day, but a few days later, he pulled to a driveway. He got off. He started cursing. He started cursing at Jonathan. This was around 2 o'clock in the morning. Come out, come out. He had a gun in his hand. He walked slowly through my driveway. Jonathan went to my room and said, Mom, he's here. He's going to try to kill me. And I went to the back door. I started to record him, and we called the police. And he did get arrested, and they did search his house, I believe, but he did get charged on this.
You say record him on your phone?
I recorded it on my phone yes, because he was coming towards my house, yes.
And so did that go to court? Or
Yes, he went to, yes, he got charged for that.
Let me ask you this, so you're kind of up until the point of around December 4th, you mentioned that was like the first night he really didn't come home.
That was the first night he didn't come home on time.
I guess you I guess at some point he was arrested. They executed search warrants. Do you remember that, Jonathan?
Yes, I do.
Um, and I guess Jonathan's been incarcerated since that time.
Yes, he has.
Okay, January of 2013. What have you noticed about Jonathan, if anything, over the last 2.5 years that he's been incarcerated? What have you noticed about him?
Yes, I noticed Jonathan, a different Jonathan. Sweet, loving, caring, very respectful, very well-mannered, no more suicidal attempts, no more aggression. I only got called maybe one time, that they had to kind of talk to him and leave him in his room. One of the directors, I remember, he said, he got the paper and he said, I don't get it. I don't understand. This is not the boy that I have here. This is totally a different boy that I have here. It's like it's a different child. And I said, yes, I know. And even in the right school and strategic, they didn't understand, they didn't comprehend why Jonathan was in that place, because they were like, this is not the boy that we see on paper. This is a very sweet boy, very kind. He does very well with structure, at this facility where he was at. And Jonathan did really good. We would see him when he would call us. He was always calm. Remember, I had the Jonathan with the mental illness, aggression, back and forth to Dorothy Dix, Holly Hills. But when we went to visit him, we visited him when he was incarcerated for 2.5 years. Just everybody, hey, what's up, Jonathan? Hey, Jonathan, oh, you're Jonathan's mom. Oh, he's a good kid, like stuff like that the staff would say to me. And it was not the first time that I heard it.
What do you attribute that to?
Say that again.
What do you attribute sort of a change to?
The structure, and that he did not have other people like Moses that, was there to instigate him.
Was he on medication?
And yes, one of the reasons was he was on medication. Exactly.
Did he always take his medication when he was at home?
No. That was some of the problems that we had, and we had to go back and forth through the hospitals because the medications were not good. Like when he was at that residential place in strategic behavior, he came out with pills, but once out of the institution, because that was a rule. You want to get discharged, you need to try your pills. But once when he came home, no more pills. So I believe the medication has helped him. He's very calm now. And Mr. Cutler, I want to point this out, if I may. When the therapist was seeing Jonathan in the 4th grade, he told us that Jonathan slept with a knife under the pillow. That Jonathan was very afraid. And he asked me why, if somebody had raped him or molested him. And I told him not that I know of. And he had talked to Jonathan, and Jonathan never indicated, but he said he was scared. I guess based what happened with his father, he would always sleep with a knife. And he did give us a knife. The therapist got Jonathan to give us the knife because he said, you can't sleep with knives anymore. You have to trust me.
Thank you, Jackie. That's all the questions I have at this time.
Questions for this witness?
Ma'am, you had indicated that Jonathan had a 9 p.m. curfew, and the first time that he didn't abide by that was on that December 4th.
Yes, that's correct.
And I believe you said you called the police on that night.
I did.
I think we've heard some statements about that during his interview that we had seen. Did you actually
Yes.
see the truck that dropped him off when he came back?
No, I did not.
What
When I pulled up to the driveway, Jonathan was not home. It was already about 11 o'clock. And I was just wondering why he was not home so late. I started to get scared. So I went to the entrance of the Montesino. And I kind of just waited to see if I would see Moses' car. Because I...
At 1010 Road you're talking about?
Yes, 1010 Road, Montesino. So I drove up there to see if Moses had dropped him because I was like, I know nobody takes my son except Moses. And I waited there and I waited there and I never saw anything. I finally saw a truck coming in, you know, but I didn't know what kind. I just knew the car he drove and it wasn't a truck. You know, so I remembered, you know, I kind of followed it. It parked in a house, I think El Caminito, I think it's called. It parked. So I was like, okay, that's not my son. So I went back to the 1010 in Montesino and I waited to see if I would see Moses. And then I got a text from Jonathan that he was home.
Remember what color that truck was?
Yes, I think like beige.
And so what happened then on the night of that all the murders happened on January the 4th? Where was the curfew on that night? Did you call again? The police and you didn't come home?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
Was that just the second time he had broken curfew, or had there been other times between the 4th and
No. No. Like I said, it was very rare. He would really come home.
So the only two times he ever broke curfew was it the 2 times?
Well, no. On the fourth shooting, I could not. On the what was it, January 4th shooting, I couldn't tell you because I wasn't at the house that night. I wasn't there. Only my husband stayed with him that night.
And speaking of your husband, that's his stepfather. Correct?
Yes,
When did the stepfather come into the picture? How old was John?
5 years old.
And so that would have been, you said you moved here from Houston when he was 3. So
Yes.
you met your husband and dealt with all that here in North Carolina?
I met him, yes. Well, I met him in Texas. My husband is from Houston, Texas as well, but he was already living here.
Speaking of which, you had indicated about all this violence that the defendant has seen, and you made the comment about growing up in Houston. I mean, do you really consider him to have grown up in Houston or grown up here in North Carolina?
No, he grew up in Houston too because half of the 4th grade, he went to school over there. Half of the 6th grade, he went to school over there. And half of the 7th grade, he went to school over there. And half of the 8th grade, he went to school over there.
And just so that we can understand, you had indicated that you moved here when he was 3, trying to escape the violence
Yes.
from Houston stuff. So why would you keep sending him back?
Because the intense with my husband, it was so severe sometimes, you know, it got out of control and I just did not want my husband or CPS to be involved. So we said, okay, maybe he can do better over there. And he would say, Mom, I want to be close to my family, my grandmother. He has a closure with them and he has a bond with them because of his father. So that's some of the reasons that I kind of let him go and kind of try it out. That's why he was kind of back and forth. You know, back and forth. And that's when I said, okay, after the incident that happened when they tried when they jumped him and when they tried to kill him, that's when I said, okay, no more Texas. We're done. No more.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. When did you finally realize that you just couldn't go back to Texas?
8th grade. Mm-hmm.
And when did your mother and the rest of your family move here?
They moved here the same year I did, but we lived in another city, but we moved here. I actually have been living here for about 15 years. Excuse me, my mom moved here like 13 years ago to Raleigh.
So the whole time that he's going back to Houston for all these things, his grandmother and your other brothers and sisters are all here living in North Carolina with you.
Yes.
Well, I shouldn't say not on that day, but in January of 2013, before all this happened, basically what was Jonathan doing at that time? Was he in school? Was he in a hospital? Was he working? What was he doing?
For what dates, I'm sorry?
Say the first week of January 2013.
He had gone back to school. He had came back from Texas because he went on vacation for Christmas. So he had came back from Texas, and it was school. So he was in school Because I think school started the 2nd, if I'm not mistaken.
What school was he in?
I cannot recall the name of the high school.
But it was a high school?
Yeah, it was a high school.
And you said he went back to Texas for Christmas that year?
Yes.
2012?
Hmm.
And at that time, he was 15, correct?
Yes.
You also indicated that you had you met Moises through your brother.
Yes.
Which brother?
Elias.
But the closest one in age to Jonathan is which brother?
Israel.
And were they close? Were Jonathan and Israel close?
Yes.
Thank you, man. I don't have any issue.
Further questions?
Just one moment, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
I can tell you. Thank you, ma'am. You can step down.
Your Honor,
15. One second. I'm clarifying something to the clerk real quick, and I'll be right.
take just a quick bathroom break.
Yes.
Thank you.